Hello guys and welcome to my channel Chess with Arsalan. In today's video we are going to analyze a game that was played recently between Magnus Carlsen and Levon Aronian in the Julius Baer Generation Cup knockout phase, and this is the first game out of four games that they have played. So Magnus Carlsen with the white pieces started with the d4, and after d5, c4, d takes c4, we have Queen's Gambit accepted, and after e3, knight f6, bishop takes c4, e6, knight f6, c5, castle and a6. And this is a very good line, and it's actually the main line that is being played in this variation. And after bishop e2, knight bd7, knight c3, b5, d5, this actually liquidates the game, and white can wait and do other moves. For example, there are other moves in this variation, but d5 is a move that leads to liquidation of the position. And after e takes d5, knight takes d5, bishop b7, take on f6, and here black played queen takes f6. And the purpose of this move is to delay white's queenside development, because at one point white will have to play and develop his c1 bishop. So this diagonal is closed, so basically white will have to develop his bishop from this diagonal or this diagonal, and in order to do so he will have to play b3, and as you can see the queen is x-raying the rook on a1. So excuse me, that's why queen f6 was played. So this move basically delays white's development. White plays a4, and the purpose of this move is actually quite clear. White wants to play a takes b4, and after a takes b4 exchange on a8, so eliminate this problematic rook, and after that play b3 and try to develop his bishop. And if black plays b takes a4, this actually damages the pawn structure, and the development of the rook will be a little bit easier. The rook can come into the game via a4 or even a3. So that's why black actually did not break the tension in the queen side and play b4, and after rook a2 preparing b3, black played knight e5. And the purpose of this move is actually eliminate the only defender of the king side. As you can see, this is the only piece that is defending the king side, and if black manages to exchange this knight, he will have a very good position, because basically all the black's minor pieces will be aimed toward white's king. So knight takes e5, queen takes e5, and after b3, bishop d6 was played. And as you can see, there are these bishops are actually very dangerous for this king. Now if white plays g3, because black is threatening to take on h2 and checkmate, if white plays g3, there will be problems with the lightest squares bishop, lightest squares around the king because of this bishop. So that's why after bishop d6, white played f4, which is a very good move. It shuts down this diagonal, but it has consequences, and the consequence is the pawn on e3. Queen e7, bishop c4. This bishop is excellently placed, and after castle, white plays queen g4. Now in the long run, white wants to play bishop b2, rook to e2, rook to e1, and eventually play e4 and liquidate this weakest square on e3. If white manages to do so, he will have a very good position. That's why first black played rook h8, getting out of this dangerous diagonal, and after rook to e2, black played f5. Now this advance is a little bit more difficult. So queen is under attack, queen g3, and after rook a to d8, and here black's plan is actually quite simple, because white is trying to create an attack over the king side. And black's source of counterplay is to dabble on the d file and try to use d file as a source of counterplay for himself. So bishop b2, bishop c7, and now black is basically trying to dabble his rooks on d file. And here white played h4. H4 is a very good move. White is trying to play h5 and then h6, undermining this diagonal. But he could have exchanged queens here. For example, after bishop c7, queen g5 was a reasonable move, trying to go into an endgame. For example, queen takes g5, f takes g5, and this position is roughly equal. But what white played in this position was h4, and after bishop d5, eliminating this very potentially dangerous bishop, and after bishop takes, rook takes, here white has a chance to play e4 and eliminate his weak pawn on e3. So f takes e4 was played, and after rook takes e4, here black played queen f7. So rook f to e1, white wants to invade the e8 square and sort of put his rook on e7, claiming the 7th rank. So these are the two main options for these doubled rooks. So black played bishop d6, declining access of the rook from e7, and after rook to e8, here black played king to g8. Obviously you cannot take on e8, because after rook takes e8, rook takes e8, queen takes e8, the g7 will be checkmate. So after rook to e8, king to g8 was played. And after queen f3, attacking the rook on d5, rook to d2 was played. And now this bishop is under attack. So first Carlsen exchanged the rooks on f8. So this will give white some sort of chances to place his bishop on, for example, e5, and claiming the center, because if black plays queen takes f8 in this position after rook takes f8, if black plays queen takes f8, then again white will have some sort of chances, because he can play bishop, for example, to a1 and then queen g4, and there will be some problems with this attack. But black played bishop takes, which has its own consequences. For example, gives access to access of e5 square to white's bishop. But again, this is a little bit more safe move for black. And here Magnus Carlsen actually played a very bad move here. He should have kept his bishop in this diagonal, so he can combine, for example, with queen g4 and probably rook to e6, and try to generate some sort of attack and counterplay on the king side. This was a better chance. For example, after bishop e5, black can play c4 in this position, because black is trying to create a passed pawn with the b5 pawn, because there is a 3-2 majority on the queen side, and he can play, for example, c4, and after b takes c4, queen takes c4, this position is roughly equal. Black has this passed pawn here, white has his attack, his lovely attack with queen g4, and for example h5, h6, and this position is balanced, but it's a very dynamic balance. But what Magnus Carlsen did in this position was to play bishop c1, which removes the bishop from this diagonal, and after rook to c2, now black is trying to play c4. He played f5, and basically this position is better for black. So another consequence of playing bishop c1 was the fact that this bishop was actually being sort of captivated behind f4 pawn. That's why white played f5. White played f5 in this position, so he can free his bishop along this diagonal. And after c4, b takes c4, queen takes c4, black has very straightforward plan. he wants to take on c1. This is a very short-term tactic, but in the long run he wants to play b4 b3 and try to use his passed pawn in order to have a new queen on the board. So white played the first threat is the immediate threat is to take on c1, so that's why white played bishop f4, and after rook to c3, kicking the queen from the f3, he played queen g4, Magnus Carlsen, and after this position here, black played actually queen to d4 check. The purpose of this move was not to check. Black is trying to prevent f6. That's why he played queen d4. But he could have allowed f6 to happen in this position. For example, he could have played b3. And after f6, now there is no danger for black because he can play h5, kicking the queen away, and after queen to g5, here black can play queen c5, check, and exchanging the queens, and then this b3 pawn will be very dangerous in the endgame because the rook will come behind the pawn, and this pawn is almost impossible to be stopped. So in this position, Magnus Carlsen could have allowed f6, but he didn't sort of complicate position, and he played queen d4, preventing f6 first, and after queen h2, then played rook to c4. Now this bishop is pinned, so white defended the bishop, and after bishop d6, again adding some pressure on the bishop on f4, white played g3, and now the position is a little bit changed because black had the advantage. The b4 pawn was good enough for winning the game, but now there is one additional problem in the white's position, and it's the fact that the second rank is actually very weak in this position. So black played bishop takes f4. Obviously this was not the only possible continuation, but this was what Magnus chose. And after rook takes, check, king h2. Here Magnus Carlsen played rook to f4, which is actually very good move. But there was another move that was immediately winning, and it was rook to c2. Now threat is to play queen h2 and checkmate. So queen f3 or queen h5 is almost forced. In case of queen f3, h5 preventing king from coming up. So white will have to take on h5, and after queen h2 check, queen g4, queen e2 check, king to g5, queen e7 check, king to g4, and b3. And because the queen is on e7, the access to the e8 square is denied, so there is no perpetual check in this position. Also, rook cannot come to the b4 and slow down the advance of the b pawn. So that's why in this position black is actually winning. So this was a very sort of exciting continuation if black would have played rook to c2, but he played a little bit simpler. He played rook takes f4, and after g takes, queen d7, so this attacks pawn on a4, and after queen to e2, queen takes f5, king g3, queen g6, king h2, king c6, so this denies access from e8. Also, in case of queen leaving the second rank, then black's task to advance this pawn will be much easier. That's why queen e5, and white is basically trying to find some sort of perpetual check in this position. Queen c2 check, king to g1, queen to c8, queen d6, and here black actually made a mistake. Here Aronian played a5, which loses the pawn immediately and gives white some drawing chances. What he should have done in this position was to play queen to c4, and after queen to d8, king f7, queen d7, he should have come up with his king, and at some point the checks will run out and it will be black's turn to advance this pawn. But he didn't do that. He played, after queen d6, he played a5, and he lost a pawn immediately. Queen d5 check, and after king to h8, queen takes a5. Now white's chances to have some draw are actually increased. After queen to b8, targeting this pawn and also defending the pawn on b4, white played queen f5, and after b3, a5, h6, resolving any kind of back rank problem. White played queen to b1, and after b2, here white made the last very serious mistake. Any move but king f2 and king f1 was actually a drawish position. And for example, a6 had a chance, h6 had a chance, f5 had a chance. All of these moves were drawish. What Magnus played in this position was king f2, which was responded with queen takes f4, and now after, for example, moving the king to the g2 or e2, it doesn't make any difference. Queen c1 is undefendable. So I hope you enjoyed this video. See you in the next game of the tournament, Julius Baer Generation Cup, and hope to see you soon. Goodbye.